What about the recreational lifter that's let's say a little too non-compliant?
That
Like how
can
do you
happen,
guys
yes.
how do you guys like give them like the proper nudge? Because now like I don't know, more times than not, like the reason for adherence is they like to eat, they like to socialize, maybe they like to drink or whatever. Like there's always like something there that's preventing them from adhering. So how do you kind of have that conversation that there needs to be like if you want to attain this goal that you have of, changing body composition, because that's everybody's goal. If you're listening to this podcast, you probably want to gain more muscle and lose body fat. Like, how do you get them towards that? There's going to be some type of sacrifice.
I think that's one of the more challenging jobs, to be honest. It's I'd like to say I had like a super high success rate with that, but it can be hit or miss. I mean, I try to, first identify, okay, what is the issue here? And, usually it's a combination of things, but, the diet is probably the biggest thing, especially with fat loss. Like it's very easy to close a deficit without trying, and sometimes what's the and I know we've all had this conversation, the awkward conversation of like, okay, your data on your nutrition sheet, would lead me to believe we would be making significant progress here. And so like we've been doing it long enough where we know what's outside the realm of an outlier, and so there's situations where it's like, okay, we need to have the conversation of, actual like underreporting and how easy it is for that to happen even without realizing it, and, not placing blame on the individual. And I think in some cases where I've had success with this, it's just a matter of continuing to educate them on that specifically. And, for most people, I think it's more rare, for me anyway, to get people that are skipping training than it is diet, because most people enjoy the training more than dieting, so
I do.
yeah, I definitely do as well. So it's, yeah, I think the bottleneck for those individuals is oftentimes just the adherence and discipline. And there's only so much flexibility you can build into a plan. You're especially, remotely, like you're not going to be going through their refrigerator like you see like on those the Biggest Loser or whatever, scolding them, and like that's not what we do. So there's I think it's a matter of education and just on their end understanding that there's going to be sacrifices that are inevitably going to need to occur in order to get to where they want to go. But it doesn't have to mean a bodybuilding contest prep either.
See,
Do you ever have like this? I'll say, do you ever like the conversation turns into like kind of like, let's talk about the goal again? Like, let's maybe reestablish the goals. Maybe it's at this particular point in time, maybe it's not feasible to go where we want to go. Maybe we have to kind of take a pause, work on some other things. So changing expectations, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, when you have a goal that you're, for whatever reason, falling short of on a routine basis, like that damages your self-efficacy, So just switching goals and being in a position where you don't feel like you're ending each day falling short of what you were supposed to do, I think is important psychologically for people. And so putting them in a position where they feel like they have momentum before anything dials up in terms of fat loss, I think is important.
That was a good pivot, Jeff, because I think the first half of this conversation was what competitive bodybuilders can learn from recreational bodybuilders. And I think now it's kind of flipped the other way around where I forgot about those guys, those rec bodybuilders that are like, this bodybuilding thing looks cool. Like, give it a try, hire a coach. Here we go. It's going to happen. And it's like, dude, like you're going to have to be an active participant in this process. Like it doesn't stop with basically hiring me. And because there is no competition deadline, at no point are they going to be up on stage in front of all these people wearing very little clothes. It's it can kind of become a whatever sometimes. And I think first of all, you start off with, and you hinted at this, Jeff, like, why are you doing this? Like seriously, why? Like, let's get to the root of why you're doing this. Because things that are really your goals, things that you like really want, you just wake up with this very intrinsic drive to get those things done. I think we've all felt that at some point where we just feel so compelled to do the work that, you know, to other people, it's like, where's this energy coming from? Like, how do you keep showing up? And it's like, I don't realize what I'm doing. I don't know what you're talking about. Like, that's what, like, things that are of high priority to you should feel like, especially once you've really reasoned that, like, this, you've outlined your whys quite clearly to yourself. So I think you get to the root of that, because maybe what they're looking for, I don't know, like we can do it through like running or something else. And then I wouldn't be the right coach for that. So the whys have to be reestablished. Like, let's really get into that. And then I think secondly, like this is where like the broiest of bros have it right. And I'm gonna let the cat out the bag, but like Brian's been meal prepping lately. He sent me a picture. Jeez.
Right. And there's nothing wrong with that, man. Nothing wrong with that.
I don't know how I feel about that yet, but there is some truth to the fact that like every time you eat one of your little Tupperwares, it's like a W. It's like there is no. So actually, I feel good about that, Jeff. Like it's like here's your little W. It's like you don't have to think about what you're going to eat, because like decision making sometimes like we have enough of those to make. So this is where I'd start to borrow things from like bros, where it's like, okay, like from now on, like even if it's like 2 times a week, because I'm having a hard time having this inconsistent recreational bodybuilder make it to the gym 3 times, these 2 hours a day, it's like these 2 slots, like twice a week, like they're just out of bounds. Like you can't schedule anything there. Like this is your boundary. Like you have to be protective of that time slot the same way that, I don't know, like Dorian Yates was about his training window, right? And the same thing with like little systems like with the meal prep, where it's just like, all right, like dinner can be whatever, but your first 2 meals of the day, let's say this person eats 3 again, it's like they're already pre-made, you just do them. And then at the end of the day, you're going to feel super good because like, hey, you said no to the coworkers that wanted to go out to, you know, do whatever after work, but you have to go train. You got your 2 meals at home, and now you're here sitting at home enjoying dinner with the family, and like it's a win. And that sort of stuff like builds momentum. Like you see that, damn, I can get stuff done. So usually for those folks, it's like, I'm going to take a page out of like the very regimented bodybuilders out there, and not overwhelm them. And it's like, okay, from now on, like you're living like AJ Morris, bro. No, like, but we'll pick 1 or 2 things that AJ does, and it's like, this is what you're doing. And if you do this consistently over the course of the week, we had a damn good week. And then we just keep adding and adding more once they kind of like dominate those areas of their life. But yeah, you can't have the floaty ones because they're not competitive. They think they can just run around doing whatever. And eventually you have to let them know they're like, bro, like you're just paying me to like watch you just dance in circles, basically.
Yeah. I think for a lot of those individuals, like many of them are interested for the right reasons.
Yeah.
I think it's just once it's overcoming that initial like inertia of a deficit, you know, and it's like, wow, this sucks. This is a lot more work than I thought it would be. And so, you know, the 3 preps, you know, contest season that I've done, you know, 2 of them have been, you know, pretty diverse in terms of food selection, you know, and you know, there's probably only a handful of days that were the exact same. But I also had more time and more mental bandwidth at those seasons to be able to like, okay, what do I want to eat for lunch? Rather than like, okay, I've got 15 minutes. I need to go put something together that's conducive for my goals. And so I think having, meal prepping, like that's not the end goal necessarily for a lot of these people, but it can get them that initial momentum where they're not having to think too much. And then from there, it's like you can kind of peel it back a little bit.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think you're right. I think that's something that, the like traditional kind of bro bodybuilding community does well. And at the same time, they don't do well because sometimes they're also like, okay, if I ran out of meal 3, like, what am I going to do? And then they end up missing a meal rather than eating or whatever, So, yeah, I think there's a lot that can be learned on both sides for sure.
It's like like my son, he's off for school. He's got 2 more days. He's got to go back to school. So his routine obviously changed. So before it was like very regimented and routine. Monday to Friday, he knows he's got to get up a certain time. He's got to get ready for school. He goes to school. He comes home. He has a certain schedule and routine after school and so on. And what I noticed between the differences between summer and school is summer, it's not as regimented. There's a lot more flexibility in it. So you can kind of see the stability in him. Like when he's at school, he's like his demeanor, like he's not as stressed. He's more calm. He's like, he kind of just knows, okay, this is what I got to do. Whereas the summer, it's always like, what are we doing? What are we doing? Where do we go? What do I have to do? It's like, so it's just not as stable, so having a good structure in place, whether that's a meal plan, maybe to just take you from point A to point B before you can graduate going to point C. Having that consistency there, it's going to breed like a lot more stability and confidence. And if you're following through and you're consistent with it, you're bound to see some progress. And when you see progress, what does that lead to? More motivation, your desire to keep doing it. So it's kind of like you said, Berto, it's like generating some momentum, but it has to start with like setting up some type of structure. And that structure could look different. Like going back again to the Monday through Friday bodybuilder, like there's a good routine in place Monday through Friday. The weekend may be a little less predictable, but at least 5 out of the 7 days, you're more or less kind of like moving towards the goal, as long as day 6 or 7 isn't like too crazy.
Yeah, it's a good point with kids. I've noticed that too with mine is once school starts, it's like everything is just a lot smoother just in the house. Like I'm more efficient with things, because I can kind of get into a more predictable routine.
Yep.
And yeah, I think when it comes to, the motivation aspect, like that's a byproduct of structure and action. It doesn't usually precede that.
Exactly.
And I think that's something, if people are motivated, just start and you'll be surprised at how much you can accomplish, assuming you can get some success out of the gate. But yeah, it's kind of funny. I was joking with our neighbor a little while ago how when I was a kid, like I would look forward to summer vacation, count down the days, and now like as a parent, it's kind of opposite. It's like now I'm counting down the days till school starts so I can just have a more streamlined schedule. But no, it's funny.
So you get kind of the best of both worlds. If you start out a little bit more like a recreational bodybuilder, you kind of learn to be a little bit more flexible because you don't have as many constraints. But then when you're a competitive bodybuilder, you learn to be like more rigid, and it teaches you, about discipline, follow through. So it's like if you can kind of marry the two, then I think I could confidently say this, that you'll get more like all three of us, because we're kind of at that point now where we can be very flexible and we can be very rigid at the same time.
Yeah, ideally, like that's how you should do the bodybuilding thing. You come in as a recreational bodybuilder. Like a lot of people who go the patient route with me, they will actually, in hindsight, or once we get a few things done, they're like, damn, you know what? I look pretty good. I'm having an easy time balancing everything. I don't think I want to compete anymore. Like this is perfect because they also understand because we've talked about like all the things that might happen that will happen when you do prep and they're like, no, I'm jacked. Like I got my little abs, I got a little quad vein, like this is good and plenty for me. So yeah, I don't know. I think at the end, and this is kind of what made me feel a bit uneasy about this podcast, is that everyone's path is so different, especially when we're talking about recreational bodybuilders, because for competitive bodybuilders, it's pretty straightforward. It's like, hey, they want to make it to that stage. With recreational folks, it's like, man, like the gates are wide open. Like I think about how would my training look like if I didn't want to compete anymore? If it wasn't high on my priority list, I'm like, man, I think I'd probably run a marathon at some point the next 5 years. I'd probably golf. I don't know, but there'd be other things that I would do concurrently along with like my training. So, again, like as a recreational bodybuilder, there's just so many ways to be a bodybuilder. Like it's not just the stage. I find them to be some of the most interesting projects I get to work with because the competitive stuff, it's like, I know what the curriculum looks like. I know what this person needs. Hopefully they agree with me because I really do think they need to do it in this order and this is the timeline. But with the recreational folks that I don't know, like you have a sumo wrestler, Brian, right?
I do.
So
I do. Yeah, that's actually that. I'm glad you brought that up because he wasn't a sumo wrestler when I started. But yeah, he was, a recreational, we can say bodybuilder, just a non-competitor, just wanted to improve body comp. And so he's, it's been cool. Like he'll send me videos of his matches and everything. And, he competes as like a lightweight, and that was one conversation we had to have. Cause I think, when people think sumo wrestling, they think like, okay, bigger is better, and, so now I think he's starting to, he's always respected the technical side, but I think he's truly appreciating, like, I think he went to a tournament and like the lightest guy there, like smoked everybody. So it's like, okay, now there's a large like technical element that I can grow significantly in, and he's loving it. So it's yeah, that I never thought I'd be working with a sumo wrestler, but it's been pretty fun.
So yeah, things like that, man. Like that's I think the best part about the recreational bodybuilders. They want to make this a part of their life and enhance their life like right off the gate. Like, and like for us, we have to learn the hard way eventually that we want to do this competitive thing, and we realize that, oh wow, like this is kind of taken away, right? Like we've all had that talk with ourselves, and then we kind of eventually flip the switch a little bit and try to like find that balance. Whereas a lot of recreational folks, they got it right from the get-go.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's a really good point with the recreational athletes being, we're able to help them more out of the gate, because somebody that applies for prep, in the back of their mind, like they're not going to be like their success to them is getting on stage and doing well, which could be 3-4 years down the road for some of them. And so it's, I think, harder for them to enjoy that process and how long it can take to unfold. Mm-hmm. Whereas, the recreational athlete, it's easy pretty much out of the gate. It's like, oh, wow, this is enhancing my life, and we're only a few weeks in. And so I think that's important. I did want to mention, Bert, you had sent me a video a while back of some guys playing cornhole on ESPN, and you said that you're very confident that within 5 years you could be a professional cornhole player. You did say that.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I did. No, absolutely.
Yeah.
I could, like, the gene pool is really small. I look at these guys and I'm like, no, I can handle that. And the purses are better than in natural bodybuilding. So yeah, I can see it. Obviously I understand marketing a little bit, so I'd be doing my press conferences shirtless, and sex sells. But which is crazy, right? Cornhole, like in regards to finances,
marathon or cornhole competition. Could be one or the other.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. I guess while we're here, it's like recreational bodybuilders, like don't, like if you're interested in working with us, like don't shy away from that, simply because, you know, they look at dudes like Dirk, which by the way, Dirk was recreational forever. Like we've been working for 7.5 years, close to 8 actually. And for the longest time, it was like, let's just work on the things I need to work on, basically. And like here we are now. Like one day it's just dawned on him that like, hey, I think I want to finally give this a try. So yeah, just because you see some of our athletes that like stand out, or maybe even the coaches, like give us an interesting case. Like maybe we'll get another sumo wrestler.
Yeah.
We'll have our guys battle it out is what we'll do.